What is up, everybody? Welcome into Shout, a Buffalo football podcast. As always, we're brought to you by Amtrak with stops in Rochester, Syracuse, Utica, Schenectady, Albany, Hudson, Poughkeepsie, and Rhinecliff. Amtrak has you covered wherever you're going. No middle seats, plenty of legroom, free Wi-Fi, and no baggage fees. It's an experience, a fun and relaxing way to get to your destination. Our special guest today, Mike Sando. This might be one of your busiest weeks of the year. The quarterbacks tiers have dropped over at The Athletic, and you're probably going podcast to podcast with a bunch of people asking, why is this guy ranked here, and everything that you've learned throughout your journey. So how's the week been, I guess, to start with?
It is my favorite work week of the year. I mean, it's just fun. You put a lot of work into something and people enjoy it, and then they come up with things and challenge different things of it and make me think. They make me really think it through. So I get a lot better through the process. And I think everybody does enjoy, people respect the process, and how it's done. And so then they like to talk about, what about this? So everybody kind of learns off of it.
So I want to ask you first, I think this is a great starting point because you do this every year, right? So you have all of this, you have this collection of information, or almost like an encyclopedia on all of these quarterbacks as we go through the years. What would you say was something that maybe you went into the exercise this year thinking that maybe changed by the time that you were done with all your conversations and research?
Yeah, so I thought people might knock down Jared Goff a little bit, losing Ben Johnson, their really good offensive coordinator. Goff's been somebody who's been lower before, and so that didn't happen at all. I mean, he got boosted up. He got 5 tier 1 votes, which is, I think, more than he'd gotten combined in before. He does lead the league in touchdown passes the last 3 years with 96. He's been really good, but that was one that surprised me a little bit. I think the public was surprised by Jalen Hurts being only tied for 9th after a Super Bowl MVP, and he's had 2 Super Bowls, but that one didn't surprise me too much. The last thing was just, I thought the conversation around Caleb Williams was more negative than I was anticipating. It was really positive for, obviously, Jaden Daniels, Bo Nix, even Drake Maye. People would point out that he was in a bad situation, and so it was hard to evaluate him. But a lot of the voters were, critical of Caleb Williams and questioned his ability to process, and just thought they had more questions going in, which was, I guess, understandable. But he was a consensus number 1 pick not long ago, So I think he's going to be somebody to watch.
So obviously, Bills fans are sitting there watching this right now, saying, "All right, get to Josh Allen right now. I want to hear everything about Josh Allen." I went back and there's a cool chart in the article or a graphic where you can kind of cycle through each season, and you go from 2019 when Josh Allen was, started in the tier list, and you're looking at the bottom tiers, right? Tier 4 or 5. And he kind of jumps up year by year. The last couple he's been in tier 1, but not unanimous. 47 people have him in tier 1, 3 in tier 2. Of the 3 people that voted tier 2, what is the biggest hold up in kind of elevating him into that top tier?
Yeah, I think, if you talk to 50 people, you're going to talk to somebody who, saw the game that he went 9 for 30 or whatever, or I think there's one guy who had only Mahomes and Burrow in tier 1. So he's like, maybe, valuing the pure passing more and saying, hey, Lamar and Josh Allen still, rely a lot on their legs, and that's a little bit less reliable for them, maybe come playoff time, whatever. But those are out. Those are, I've just found that if you talk to 50, you're going to get some outlier type things. I thought it came out pretty good, overall. I was a little surprised maybe Burrow didn't get any 2s. Mm-hmm. I thought maybe he might get 1 or 2 2s. But it came out the way that it was, and Josh Allen was, 3 guys in tier 2. I think it says as much about the voters as it does about Josh Allen.
When you go back to last season and you go through the discourse around the MVP between Lamar and Josh, the big thing was the numbers were definitely favoring Lamar Jackson as opposed to maybe some of the efficiency numbers, or the fact that, you look across his arsenal of weapons, and without Stephon Diggs, Josh Allen, it was a completely different picture. And I think maybe there was a great deal of value in that. What's your sense when you talk to people in the league about the transition that Josh Allen went through from Diggs to this new model, this everybody eats model, Joe Brady's impact? And one of the things that I've long now attested this offseason about is people don't talk enough about how Joe Brady started with this team, right? Like taking over midway through the season for Ken Dorsey. His first true offseason was the identity shift away from Diggs into this new model. This offseason is really his first offseason to put maybe his own fingerprint on this thing. What do you get in terms of a sense with all of that, and maybe how Josh Allen has done post Diggs?
Yeah, so two things. Most of the voters that I talked to thought that Lamar should have won the MVP last year, but I've got it right here. I've got like a file where I've got all these comments from people, and some of them didn't even make it in. I don't even remember if this one made it in, but it's exactly what you're talking about. I said, "Hey, what do you got for Josh Allen?" He goes, "Tier 1." And he said, "I've got it." He said, "What he did last year with that group, he was able to spread the ball out. It was that maturation process. When you have an elite receiver, you go to him regardless. Last year, we saw him spread the ball out a little bit and do more with less. Plus, he still has that threat that Lamar has as a runner, particularly in the red zone." So that's an acknowledgement of exactly what you're talking about, right? The ability to evolve to what changed for the team and really flourish, be the MVP of the league.
What, on the Brady point, as somebody that covers the entire NFL, what's the temperature in New York around Brian Daboll? Because one of the things as I kind of look into the, not so distant future here, Joe Brady with another season like last year, may very well be a head coach at this time next season. And you start to think about, what does this look like long-term in terms of pairing an offensive mind with Josh Allen? And, the Dorsey model, somebody that was kind of here, and Ronald Curry might fit that mold, and that might be like kind of just raise up the next guy that's been in the system. It worked with Brady. But the one kind of crazy off the wall idea I have is when that eventually happens, if that somehow marries to Brian Daboll maybe running out of time in New York and maybe coming back because he's so close with Josh Allen, where do things stand in terms of Brian Daboll approval rating there and that whole situation in New York?
Well, I mean, his approval rating's low right now because they haven't. I think it's going to be determined ultimately by what he gets out of Jackson Dart. Are they going to play him this year? And if he takes off, I think Daboll's reputation's restored and helped. It's been tough the last couple of years, and he's been in a different role. Some of the volatility and the temper and some of that stuff has, I think, hurt the perception of him. And so the question I would ask then is, was Brian Daboll exactly what Josh Allen needed at that stage of his career? I'd say yes when he was there. Then you have to ask the question, is he exactly what Josh Allen needs now at this stage of his career? And you may know that better than me, just following the Bills and what Daboll was like when he was there. But I think that would be the interesting question because Josh is at a different stage of his career right now. And who knows what he wants or what they want staff dynamic wise to fit in there.
I think the Burrow Allen conversation is interesting. I think most of the time when people are having a passionate conversation, it's between when it comes around Allen, it's Allen Mahomes, obviously, because of the playoffs. And then it's Allen Lamar, same draft class, similar styles in terms of very mobile dual threat quarterbacks. The Burrow Allen one to me is super interesting because it doesn't get talked about as much. And part of the problem the last couple of years, Joe Burrow hasn't been in the playoffs. Josh, how much do you think, Burrow around the league, and you mentioned that, just as a pure passer, gets really high grades, but just hasn't had the playoff success outside of that one season where they went to the Super Bowl. And even then, the playoff numbers didn't blow you away. I mean, Josh Allen's sitting here with 25 career passing touchdowns. And I wonder sometimes if even within the league, that isn't weighed highly enough. What's your kind of take on that?
You mean in terms of Burrow being overrated based off of the
maybe
playoffs?
being a little overrated because of the lack of playoff production outside of that one run of the Super Bowl and his own personal numbers not being maybe where you probably would have expected, knowing who he had and also what he's done in the regular season.
Yeah, I think for Burrow just gets super respected by the opposing defensive coordinators and I think players for his not just his toughness but his accuracy, ability to pinpoint it. I think he brings a spirit to the game. I think he sort of has it, whatever that is. And then you also take into account it's the Bengals. He's with the Bengals. It's that organization, and you can see him trying to shape it. You can see him trying to hold the front office accountable, trying to get him to do different things. And you don't really get the feeling necessarily that um, that team is doing everything he would like, right?
Mhm.
And the partnership is maybe a little bit different than it is in Buffalo or Kansas City, where you clearly have the quarterback and the ownership and the front office sort of being, uh, like I said, a partnership. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but I don't think, obviously, Burrow's unanimous tier one, so I don't think anyone's holding anything against him.
Right. Um, We're brought to you by Amtrak. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel as well. We're joined by Mike Sando from The Athletic. The quarterback tiers list is out, and I'm scrolling through here, and I come to number 17, Tua Tagovailoa from the Miami Dolphins. Drake Maye at number 22. Obviously, two quarterbacks in the AFC East that the Bills will play twice this season. Do you feel like their kind of ships might be passing in the night here as we move into this season? And what's the potential of, we get to next, I know there's potential for everything, but we get to next offseason and Drake Maye maybe passes to what's your sense on those two situations, looking from afar, and then the conversations you're having?
Yeah, so I think we know that what Tua is and that he's not going to be a superstar, right? I mean, it has to sort of be set up for him properly. Uh, for him to play that way. He gets off schedule or his timing's off, he's not going to rescue it. And then you also have the issue with the concussions. I mean, I think people are just waiting for the next huge hit that's going to call his career into question. So, plus, remember, they've kind of went all in the last few years, and now it almost feels tenuous, like that there could be changes there. So that feels like it could change to me, something there could change. Whereas I think Drake Maye's just getting started. And he's going to have a longer runway, and certainly he's a different player physically, athletically. So, sometimes you benefit as a young player by the unknown. Like people, hey, until maybe after 3 years, we found out that Drake Maye is Trevor Lawrence for all we know. But right now, it seems like he could be a lot more than that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think that there's hope there in New England without any obvious limitation. There doesn't seem to be anything anyone is bringing up that causes a huge concern with Drake Maye, whereas there are big concerns with Tua, and also we've seen what the limitations are.
So I'm looking at the latest live Super Bowl betting odds. Baltimore Ravens sit here at plus 700, as do the Bills and the Eagles. This is a Bills podcast, obviously. So, I think the arc of Josh Allen, this regime in general, whether it be Brandon Beane and the job that he's done. I mean, talk about finding Josh Allen. You're also coming off of an offseason where he handed out 5 extensions, ending with today's James Cook extension from 4 of those players from the 2022 draft class. Sean McDermott, a lot of success over time, but criticisms as well, like maybe shrinking a little bit in big games. What are your 2025 expectations for this team? And, I don't know if you make Super Bowl picks or anything like that, but how do you feel like this scenario of 2025 with this iteration of the Bills team stacks up versus years past in terms of maybe them getting over the hump?
So I do a weekly radio show in Kansas City, and I just actually finished up talking to them, and they put me on the spot at the end. Hey, what's your Super Bowl pick? And I don't have one yet for the season officially, but I just, off the top of my head, I said, all right, I'll take the Bills over the Eagles. Now, I think the Eagles, I don't know if they're going to stay healthy enough. They did last year. They're sort of on the edge with their roster, I think, in terms of, being kind of extended out there. But I went with that, and, we'll see. I think with the Bills, it's great to re-sign your own guys. Did they re-sign all the right guys? What's the impact of that? I've heard different opinions on that from people in the league. Obviously, James Cook's probably a good one to resign, but I think the time will tell. I just felt good about him last year. Like, I feel like the Bills have just been in a good place, just like mentally, some of that stuff that was really wearing them down before. I just feel like it cleared, and I thought they had a chance last year to go all the way. So I don't know. Am I right on that? Do you feel like that? It felt like it was just so tense for a while, and it just kind of feels like it's not.
Yeah, I almost feel like the air comes out of the balloon a little bit pressure wise when it's the same result. Like, you know exactly what you have to do. It's the same team standing in your way. And honestly, I think in a lot of these games, you can make the argument that, Josh has outplayed Pat in those big games, right? Like, you can make the argument statistically, whatever. And it feels like that, whatever, like circumstances, maybe not making the plays in the final moments and not being able to finish it off. They're a really good team. And I wonder this year, thinking from a Kansas City perspective, if Chris Jones's unbelievable string of health ends and what kind of impact that has on that defense. I know Spagnuolo is so good. Offensively, they're actually more intriguing than ever. Like, they have this Travis Kelce potential problem if he ever ends up falling off a cliff and it isn't able to kind of get it going in the playoffs. You got Xavier Worthy, you have Rashee Rice coming back. There's some weapons there that I think you get excited about if you're Kansas City. But then I think it's just the gauntlet. Like, the biggest challenge for me is one of these years, I think that they'll probably beat Kansas City in the playoffs, right? But wouldn't it be just the most Buffalo story ever to beat Kansas City in the playoffs and then run into Lamar or Joe Burrow in the AFC Championship game and lose to them? And that's the biggest conundrum, is that this conference, it's a gauntlet.
I agree. I think another big variable for Kansas City is they drafted a left tackle. If they solve their left tackle situation, I think the offense could open up. I think that was a big part of their issues last year. It was bad. And so they used their first round pick on Simmons. And if he's healthy, I mean, he could be a really good find for them. So, there is a gauntlet. But, Kansas City, maybe they do just keep winning all the close games forever. They were 11-0 in one-score games last year. They won 17 in a row of them. I don't think that's sustainable. I just don't. I feel like they're going to, I think there'll be one of these years when they don't have home field advantage, or don't have a bye, and it'll catch them. I don't know if it's this year, but I think they're closer to that than they have been.
That's the piece to the schedule and the Bills attaining that first seed, which I think it's really important. The real big heavyweight fights are spread out throughout the season, right? Like, so you're week 1 against Baltimore, and then you wait a little while till Kansas City, and then a little while Cincinnati, and then Philly at the end of the year. So there's some, you probably get excited about that, but I also don't put too much stock into that because we don't really know how good a lot of these teams are going to be. Last season we had it all kind of pegged maybe a little bit wrong, right? Like LA ended up being a little bit better than the Rams than you thought. That back-to-back was about as tough as one as you could play against the Lions and the Rams. They almost won both of them. So it's hard to kind of play all that part of it out. But I agree with you. I think the continuity and like just completely like banging down the door year after year, it's if they stay, the most important thing is Josh Allen, who is the reigning MVP, of course, but he's also like the NFL's Iron Man, right? Like, he hasn't missed a start since I think the elbow injury against Houston his rookie season.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's what the Bill strategy is. Clearly just keep knocking on the door, right? Just keep coming back and don't try to, and don't do anything too rash to mess it up and risk having a bad year.
Speaking of knocking on the door, people should be knocking on the door over at The Athletic to make sure that they're checking out not only the quarterbacks tiers list, but all of your work over The Athletic. Let everybody know what they can find if they subscribe.
Yeah, well, certainly, I think the column I do on Mondays called the Pick Six column is, a little different than most of them out there. It's pretty in depth, and you're going to hopefully find something that you like in there, whether it's about the Bills or not. And then you can also find me on X at Sando NFL. So appreciate you having me on, and look forward to our next conversation.